Okay, well, it strikes me that there's a lot going on with Icelandic Roots, as always. So, who better to discuss some things with us than Sunna and Becky, joining Owen and I here? So, why don't we just get rocking and rolling and, well, maybe just talk a little bit about what you got going on, what you're excited about. Anyone can take the bait.
Go ahead, Sunna.
Okay. So, what I've been working on and getting really super excited about is the upcoming celebrations that we're going to be having. So, of course, the first one for us is the Deuce of August, which will be in Mountain, North Dakota, the very end and beginning of August, very end of July, beginning of August. And we have a really fun lineup for Friday. We are actually going to have 5 speakers Friday afternoon, starting at noon. And Icelandic Roots will be there and having a lunch. And then we have a presentation by Claudia Peterson, our friend with the Njál Saga Tapestry. And we have Jason Doctor, who's going to be talking about the sagas themselves and how they associate with Icelandic Roots. And we'll be talking about a short minute about my book, The Icelandic Immigration Journey from Turf Houses to Prairie Homesteads, because it's about the North Dakota and Minnesota Icelanders mainly. And then we'll have a weather expert who spent a year in Iceland on a Fulbright scholarship. He's a professor at UND and in Grand Forks, talking about the weather in Iceland and in North Dakota. And so that's going to be Friday. Then we'll do an open session teaching people about the database and about Icelandic Roots, and then give some usernames and passwords to people so they can play around with the database. And then Saturday will be the big program and the parade, like always. And then we head up to Gimli, where the New Iceland Heritage Museum, where Owen's mom, Juliana, is the director there. And we are, as always, Sunday afternoon from 1 to 4 in the New Iceland Heritage Museum. And Claudia and Jason will be there talking about sagas, talking about the tapestry, and how they all fit together. And then we'll do another session for Icelandic Roots. And so it's going to be really exciting. And then the second thing that will be after that is the trip to Iceland. So that's a whole nother fun piece.
Absolutely. I've seen a couple of the Facebook posts about the trip there coming up. And I wish I had a little more time in August to tag along for something like that. But
so you'll be there in Gimli.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. I'll be there for 125. It'll be pretty special. I actually saw they announced, I believe, the president of Iceland is going to be coming this summer to the Íslendingadagurinn. So,
does that look iffy, Sunna?
Yeah, I don't think that's for sure yet. I know she wants to. And we heard in Mountain that she wasn't sure if she could come or not. So there's a huge choir coming, though, and some other dignitaries that'll be coming. And so I hope she can swing it, because that would be awesome if she could come. The president of Iceland could come. That would be awesome for 125, especially for Íslendingadagurinn.
Absolutely. And that's the choir, the Karlakor Hrephanna and Spretskorin, if I'm saying those names hopefully half correctly there. But yeah, that'll be fantastic. Over 40 members and one choir with about 70 singers I'm reading here. So that's going to be incredible.
Yeah, that'll be fun. They'll be powerful, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. If you get that many voices, especially Icelanders together, it makes for a pretty memorable experience.
And how about you, Becky? I got a copy here of the Stories, Sagas, and Captivating Tales, the First Decade of Icelandic Roots. Now, do we call this your book? How do you look at that? It's sort of a collection.
It's a collection of almost all the people who write for Icelandic Roots. I tried to go through and find something from everybody that I could. this was in honor of our 10th anniversary and all the things we've done. And it's got some fabulous stories. And so it's just sort of a good book to look at if you want to know about the history of Iceland, about our immigration, about pioneer stories, sagas. It's kind of everything. So, and even though it's on our website and you could read it, a lot of people don't know that. They don't go and look. And so by putting it in a book form, I think at least it's getting a little more read. So those stories known. But we decided if we do it again, it's going to be a lot less, like 5 years or less, because it came out to be such a big book after 10, we want to do 100. And I think we got exactly 100 in there. So, but
Yeah, I love the size of it. I think
yeah,
it's the bigger the better in this case, and I agree. I, of course, read the blog posts on the website, but it's really nice to have in hand. And as soon as I grabbed this, I thought, oh, wait, this is going to be a great resource just to have at my writing table. I mean, the website is a great resource, but having some of the stuff from there in the book, it's just going to be a new way to interact with it. A new old way, I guess you could say.
yes,
It's going old fashioned in a book, but yeah, I think it's great. But you're right. There's so much good stuff that goes out there. You could almost publish one of these every year.
you could. And I'm a book person too, so I enjoy it. There's so many older blog posts that I don't know how many people have even read them.
Mm.
So we're thinking about for this summer in our newsletter to highlight some of them, from our past. So to get them some fresh looks at. But my project right now is our fitness. It's kind of the fitness challenge, even though that scares people off. It's our one and only fundraiser. And that's actually how I got to know Sunna, was because of this. When she did something in 2020 as some way for people to get out and do things during the shutdown. And so I wrote her a note because she sent me a few prizes. My sister and I really got into it. And of course, then what happened was, would you like to be a volunteer and take it over? So ever since then, I've been doing it, and we found a different platform, and it's a lot of fun. People are already forming teams, and you get to do a virtual tour of Iceland on our platform. You can see as you enter your distances, you can use Google Earth to see where you would be if you were actually there. And then 30 times throughout the course, you get a virtual postcard that has a picture and then some information about the area, maybe the history. This year, we're trying to find something that has to do with arts and culture in that area. So I have a lot of repeat people that come every year, but I'd like to get more people because I don't think they understand. It's actually a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And you can sign up like just as yourself or make teams with people or join teams that are also there too, right?
Yes, that's it. So what I started doing last year is I made a couple of Icelandic Roots teams for people who didn't have family. My sisters and I do it every year. We have our own little team Hrise, and then we have to compete against each other to see who gets the most by the end. And
Oh, fantastic. A little competitive spirit between siblings never goes wrong.
well, it's just motivated.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Well, and
Oh,
I
we
think
need to get
the good
our
part-
team together.
Yeah. Well, I know Jody Armand Jones always tries to get a Snurry team going, but she's never had much success getting enough people to complete the route. So you should try it this year, or just whatever team you want to do.
I was going to say, Jack, we might just have to run double this year.
Yeah.
Well,
Becky,
here's the
could
tip:
you-
ride your bike, because
Okay.
the miles count. There, you have to. It's more than just walking, and so riding a bike is how Doug Hansen, who is INL US team, he likes to try to win the whole thing. He likes to be first, even though it doesn't count. He gets on his bike and rides a lot of miles. So anyway,
Could you just walk us through, like, what would that feel like setting up a team for someone who still, like, they understand now a bit what it's like,
yeah.
but what is that process?
You just email me. You say at 25challenge@icelandicroots.com is the email. We set a new email every year. And you say, I want to form a team. You send me a picture because you have a little icon on the map so you can see where everybody's at. I just upload it, and then if you've already registered, I move you over. And if you haven't registered, when you do register, you find your team and click it. And it's as simple as that. So
Easy peasy. And how long does it
easy.
go until?
It is going from June 14th, and then it runs for 8 weeks. So we always start around the Icelandic National Day and end. So this will be the Saturday after Íslendingadagurinn's over. So it's plenty of time if you have a team to get through it. So, and by then people are usually like, I don't want to enter it and enter my miles. But if you have a smartwatch, it just does it automatically.
Right.
So pretty easy. And for $25, it's a really good deal.
And as you said, the only fundraiser.
Only fundraiser. So, and really, we don't even make $25. We make about $17. You have to pay fees, you know?
Right.
So it's more of a community event, which is what my whole team is about, is community, you know. I'm not the database team. We're try to provide things for our members to do.
Besides all the fun genealogy stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, how about you, Sunna? Were you going to say something earlier?
Well, about her fitness challenge, that's not what it's called this year. And I love that the way that she is actually talking about it now. But those little emails that come when you get to a milepost, that is the thing that hooks people. Like my sister, she is not a historian as much and doesn't do genealogy. She just asks me some questions, but she's a lifetime member of Icelandic Roots, which is awesome. But she said, those mileposts that Becky sends are awesome. I'm actually learning something, she said.
Well, and really the idea is I try to make them like a travelogue. So as you're traveling around, you could go, oh, if I'm here, look at all these things I could go see, or here's where these historic events, or here's where these sagas occurred. So that's a lot of it. So my goal is to eventually get them all put together, so then you could actually have a whole travelogue of
right, where
things
you
to do in Iceland.
Yeah, I've been. Well, this reminds me of an idea. It's a very hardcore idea. Don't think I would ever do it, but I was thinking, has anyone ever like walked around Iceland? I know there's like biking journeys, which can be precarious on the very narrow roads. And I had asked a few folks. It sounds like there was one guy. I forget the name or if it even came up on Google. But yeah, I think doing the challenge this year, I can kind of envision, okay, what would that feel like? Like, what would that distance really be like to navigate Iceland? Do kind of the ring road idea on foot. Of course, we know all of our ancestors were traveling places by foot,
Yeah.
but they didn't look at it as fitness or as a challenge. It was just necessity, right?
Right. So yeah, we call it now history under our feet. I tried to take the fitness word out so people didn't go, oh, that's not for me. So, so cultural crossroads, history under our feet is what it's branded this year.
I think that's good branding.
Thank you.
I had to Google it, Jack, just because you said it.
Yeah.
In 1985, Reynir Peter Ingvarsson walked around all of Iceland in 32 days.
Wow, 32 days. Huh.
You would have.
I wonder if that's a lot of 24-hour daylight, just a very little amount of sleep, right?
No kidding. It would be something else. I actually, I went to high school with a guy, Aidan Grimmelson, and he has only been to Iceland once, but that was his goal, was on the bike. And he said it some days felt like impossible challenges, but he somehow did manage to do the whole ring road, which I'm shocked by.
Wow.
Well, okay, so I just did the math. That's 26 miles a day.
Okay,
yeah, almost
a day.
Absolutely. You'd need some heavy hours of walking in order to get some sleep at that point.
So, well, maybe he did ultra marathoning and take a couple days off or something.
Yeah, I guess if you're running, yeah.
So,
Sunna, does this bring any historical stories to mind? Do you know of like interesting Icelanders that did sort of feats like this?
Well, you think about the postmen that had to bring the mail. You can imagine the amount that they had to walk, and they didn't always have a horse. And can you imagine the weather, that they had to put up with? And that's in Canada and North Dakota, Minnesota too. The postmen had to travel long ways.
But
In the
that's
middle of January, nonetheless.
Yeah.
right.
And
So
the
I,
midwives and the doctors, and,
Mm.
that they traveled a lot too. And that would be quite difficult. And, we're getting ready to do these immigration port ceremonies in Iceland. And so we're doing a lot of research for Húsavík this year. It's going to be Húsavík, Stykkishólmur, and Eyrarbakki, our 3 ports that we're visiting. And so we're trying to learn all the stories we can from each area. And it's just incredible. We have to narrow it down to put it on the storyboard panels, but it's incredible the amount of stories that are there, and the hardships and the courage and the strength that these people had of not only their bodies, but their minds to make it work.
mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Great choices for places to have the port ceremonies. I think Stykkishólmur is probably in my, I don't want to pick favorites, but I'm going to pick favorites. It's probably in my top 3 of my favorite rural Icelandic towns.
Yeah, I always remember that name from my Avi, my Amma and Avi. They also really liked that place. They had a photo of the church always on their cabinet, and I just thought the name was funny as a kid. It was like Stinky Homer. I don't know what it made me think of, but it was just this funny name that I always really liked. And it was kind of surreal then visiting there. When we were on Snorri, Owen, stayed at that nice little hostel there. We went on the boat tour, the Viking sushi.
Viking
And that
sushi,
was,
yes.
yeah, just kind of
Yeah, it
really
was
surreal to
fantastic.
be there.
Yeah,
Well,
that tour was so good. I took my fiance back when I brought her there last time, and she was pretty impressed. She actually, I think she shucked more oysters than I did, and had them on the boat. So she was a fan.
well, Sue and I were in Stykkishólmur last year with Doug to kind of in preparation for this tour, and we had a little house we had rented, and the wind started to blow, and we thought for sure we were taking off in the house. It was
Wow.
shaking the windows, it was shaking the floors, the walls. It was like, so we had to cut our visit short. The next day we're like, yeah, let's just head back to Reykjavik because we were going out in it. It was crazy. So, but it was fun. So,
Yeah, well,
and
just
then my
regular life can be quite intense.
it is. And then my family came or immigrated from Húsavík, so I really like that
Mm.
area too. So, um,
Yeah, haven't been there
Absolutely.
yet. Really looking forward to it.
it's a nice little town. So, well, not far away is the farm that my grandmother was born in. So that's why it has a
Right.
special spot in my heart. And I actually got to go into the house and have met the people. And last year they had us for over for lunch with the whole family. So it's a wonderful place.
Oh, fantastic. I always love hearing stories about that because I truly don't think I've ever experienced or even heard of any other culture of that side of it having such neat connections back to family that's still there. Like I feel like everyone you talk to who has been there or is close to their genealogy and that side of it, everyone has those wonderful stories of kind of reconnecting. And it's awesome that the Icelandic population is so interested in keeping those connections too. So it always warms my heart to hear the lunches and dinners that they're always willing to host and have.
Yeah, when we send any emails or information to people in Iceland, we always look to see who they're the most closely related to. Like in Stykkishólmur, the vice mayor that I'm speaking with is one of my close cousins from up by Langanes. And so he was super excited to see how we were related. And this Cousins Across the Ocean project with Icelandic Roots is so phenomenal and so unique. And it's great to keep it going. And we have this cousins form that people can fill out for free. It's right on the front of our website. It says cousins form. And so if they're Icelandic, anyone that's listening, if you're Icelandic and you haven't sent in your cousins form, it's super easy to do and it's free. And then your family can make sure that they're saved in the database and that we can keep this Cousins Across the Ocean project going.
Yeah, I don't know how it is for you, Owen, but I will often explain to people like the genealogy aspect in Iceland. I'll say like to my coworkers, just think about this. If we were both in Iceland right now, we were both Icelandic, we could just pull out our phones and see how much we're related. Like how cool would that be? The thing is, though, you can also do that if you're in North America, if you have Icelandic ancestry. But like you say, you have to make sure you're in the database. And unfortunately for me, I guess I don't really encounter people like more randomly that happen to have Icelandic ancestry. Might be a bit different for you, Owen, in Winnipeg. And of course, when you're in Gimli, those connections are much stronger around there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I can't even count on my hands last summer the amount of people who were exactly that, even talking about I think there was some presentation that was somehow mentioned the Íslendinga book, and then there was a couple of older Snorris who were talking to me and they were like, oh, like something like that would be so cool. And I was like, well, you guys are either missing out or you haven't heard about it yet, because the Cousins Across the Ocean would be exactly what you need to get in to figure some of that stuff out. So I think at least 3 or 4 people had gone right to the workshop after that. Actually, I had spoken on the Saturday, and then the Sunday they were right into it. So
yeah, Icelandic Roots is just new, really. It's only 12 years old, not even quite. And, so that's pretty new for an organization, but it has grown quite a bit. And with our volunteers that we have, it's grown phenomenally. I mean, we add into the database, on average, 2,500 people per month. And we fix and update about 8,000 people per month, adding a photo or a document or a death or a new baby, or that would be adding a person, obituaries or all kinds of different things. We update census records, everything. We can add so much information. And the guys that are doing the immigration story with David Johnson, Dave Jonason, Willie Engelson, they've been working on this for so long and they're making such great progress. So it's really fun to be able to see all that immigration stuff. And I talk to people all the time and they're like, oh yeah, my family's from, I'll use my uncle for an example. We had 9 people who immigrated from Iceland, and he'll say, yeah, our ancestors immigrated from Hvammur, the farm Hvammur. And I'm like, well, that was one of the farms, but you have lots of other farms. And he's like, oh yeah, I had to look at Icelandic Roots and I didn't even know that I was associated with all these farms. And so the mapping features and all the information that's there, it's kind of overwhelming, actually. So that's why we have training sessions and we have little tutorials so that people can figure out where they should look for information.
Mm-hmm. No, awesome. Good segue point too. Congratulations on 12 years as well, you guys. Interesting question to pose, but do you guys have any specific moment or highlight over the past 12 years that would probably be which you would consider like a favorite or a really memorable memory?
You mean working with Icelandic Roots, or just using?
I wouldn't even necessarily say working, just any involvement with it or any experience that would be related to it.
Well, for me, it's been getting to know Sunna. We've become friends. We've traveled twice now together in Iceland, and we've had a great time. We've had some fun adventures. And pulling out that relationship calculator, is so amazing. We went in 2023 and 2024, both times wind up finding like third cousins in these random places. Like we're taking a ferry back from this little island, Hrise, where my great grandparents were born. And I walk in to get a different camera lens, and this gentleman says, "Are you American?" And I said, "Yes." and we start talking, and then next thing you know, Sunna pulls it out and we're third cousins, you know? So that was fun. And then last year we did the same thing in Siglufjordur. I happened to see a sign about a troll. I wanted to see the troll. Then a lady waves at me, who's her property. Turns out her husband's my third or fourth cousin. So I love that relationship calculated. Like, here I am in Iceland. My grandparents, or my grandma was a child, but 1893 they immigrated. And yet I somehow still have fairly close cousins there. So I think that's been the highlights for me.
I think also for me, the relationships, the relationships are what makes it. And getting together for Samtal Hour and the book club, and those are both under Becky's team, those community events, and seeing people that you just meet, on Zoom calls. When we traveled in 2023, the bus driver, who was Icelandic, from Iceland, an Icelandic bus driver, he was marveling every single day. Are you guys sure that you haven't traveled together before? You guys are all like best friends, like your family. And I'm like, yeah, we are.
Yeah, that's Gunnar, right?
Yeah.
The bus driver. Yeah, you would really like him, Owen. He's a great guy, and hopefully the bus driver again this year. I think they're trying to work on that.
Yep. He's been asked. Yeah. But, you just get to be friends. And one of the surprising things about Icelandic Roots, now you two guys are young, and we really appreciate that young voice, and the podcast is perfect. And just thanks a million for this. But most of our volunteers are retired. And many, many times through the last, all these years, I get messages from people that say, I retired and I've been, not sure what to do with my life. And now I feel like I'm productive. I have a place where I meet with my friends. I have something that I can do, that I'm actually making a difference in other people's lives and protecting and preserving our Icelandic story. And everybody for Icelandic Roots is a volunteer. And so they're giving of their time. But I didn't realize how important their volunteerism was to them, until they say it. And that is surprising to me, how much they enjoy the work. And it's not work to them. It's, this community and the fun. So that's the surprising thing that came out of this.
Yeah, you really, through it, give a lot of opportunities for others. I don't think matters, like for Owen and I, not being retired, of course, and being very busy with work and other parts of life. It just really fits in, and it's fulfilling as well. I think I can speak on behalf of both of us. And it's not like, volunteering is an interesting concept, right? Of course, you're giving your time to support and to help others, depending on what it is you're doing. But it's not sustainable if you're not getting something yourself, right? You only ever do it if it's also fulfilling in a meaningful way to you. So I think that's a testament to this, that so many people do find fulfillment being involved. And I think it's really important, like just in this kind of time of history that we're in, and this concept of retirement, and, if you still have your health and your energy, like, what are you going to just sit on the beach and do nothing? Really, that's what you want for the last, decades of your life? I think everyone wants a chance to contribute to something meaningfully. And the internet, of course, is you need that as the backbone to do all of these things. So I think that's what we're building upon, right?
Absolutely. And I think just in terms of all of our genes, I don't think I know a single Icelander who's very good at sitting still. So it's good for them to have something to do.
Very true. And for those who aren't as mobile, I think our events are very important in their life, because they show up for everything. They're always there. Because it's their social outlet. It's not maybe as easy to get around. Sometimes they'll come to things like we had free database access for, I think it was our 10th anniversary, and half the people there were members. You're like, well, why are you here? You don't have to come, but they just want to be there. So they may not talk a lot, but it's just, they're part of a community.
Absolutely. And I know I think in the last little while, there's been more studies on it that even talk about it and show too. But I think people often, and studies are saying that too, that's a huge part of longevity and in the retirement journey is having those communities and those social circles. So I think Icelandic Roots does a fantastic job of facilitating a very welcoming and warming environment for people to come and donate their time to a very, very good cause.
We have about 70 regular volunteers now. So 70, which is phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it certainly is important. Like, we could definitely title this podcast something like The Power of Community, which I think is kind of like I don't know, you see those phrases, it can be very like cheesy, kind of corny, like, oh yeah, the power of community, whatever. But it's really so important. And this is, I think, the greatest example, one of the greatest examples. Certainly these things exist out there in a lot of other aspects too, but whatever, it's done very well here. And maybe, yeah, like you say, Owen, there's like maybe well, I don't know. I don't want to say a genetic. I don't know how much these things are really passed down, but definitely a cultural thing that seems to be like the Icelanders embody this kind of idea of connectedness, right? And you feel it when you're there physically in the country. It's like a small town kind of feeling too that you can relate to. I think Gimli or Mountain or other smaller towns, you kind of get that community aspect. And I guess, the question is like, how do you continue that when more and more people live in cities? Everything's connected, everything's online. And I think this is one way. We're kind of all figuring that out, aren't we?
Well, I hear that a lot at our either Samtal or events like that, where people will say, like myself, I did not have the benefit of growing up in an Icelandic community. My grandmother died before I was born, so I am learning about my history by coming to these events. And a lot of people are just so thankful, because how else would you know these things? And when you get to hear people like Brindy's talk about growing up in a turf house, you're like, wow, that's amazing. And going to be able to go back to Iceland and hear about things, and you start to imagine this was their life. It's filling in a lot of blanks for people. So we're not all, like you said, Owen grew up in a very Icelandic community. He knows all these things. For me, I didn't try Wiener Tartar till, I don't know, 5 years ago. You don't find it floating around in, California or Washington.
No, very good point. Very good point.
Not yet, at
all
least.
that common. Just a fun fact, now that you mentioned it, that's actually our wedding cake this July. Is
wow.
Yeah. So
that was our
Oh, fantastic. Our only problem is we're trying to do the math right now to try and get one square to everyone, but we have over 300 people coming. So it's be a pretty big Vita Tarta.
Well, you have your pretty one in the front, and then in the kitchen are all the others that you just cut up.
Exactly. That's what I think the plan is going to be, is you have the one for show and then the one that people actually eat.
You just have to employ a lot of hummus to help with the baking.
Yep.
Absolutely. We'll need an army of them.
Well, and every year our Samtal by Christmas, people start talking about that. It's just, people are obsessed. It's amazing. It's amazing. Rob, for the newsletter, has asked people about it, and all of a sudden there's hundreds of replies, or on Facebook. It's kind of crazy. So
yeah, and can be tense too, right? Major debates.
Oh yeah. Yes. Do you frost or not frost? How many layers? I mean, everybody's got their opinion.
And they're all just, slightly different.
Very much so.
We will finally get a Vina Tarta podcast this year. We'll get that going for the holiday season.
Absolutely. Yes. I think I have an Icelandic baker who is who's ready to jump on with us later this year. So he's gonna dive into it.
It's so fun. That's good. Rob will be very happy. He's obsessed with Vina Tarta.
I was going to say, you need to have Rob on this. So Well, I have scheduled for September now. There's an Arctic fox researcher from Iceland who is coming to Manitoba for some conference, I think up at Churchill. But she's going to do a little seminar for us, which I thought would be very interesting. It's the only native mammal in Iceland. So
only native land mammal.
yeah.
Yeah, I saw those
Do hear
messages.
us. Yeah.
I was thinking of reaching out for a podcast as well. Could maybe
Yes,
get some interesting stories from that.
definitely. So people even in Iceland are starting to communicate with us. We do in our newsletter once a month, we do an interesting Icelander. We thought that would be, we're trying to have some kind of focus. And this year, because it's arts and culture, I wrote about a sculptor that I've seen it in Denver and Seattle. Well, she actually saw that and sent me and put it on her Facebook page. So I was very excited. So you never know how these things go out into the internet, what's going to happen. So.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and back to the point earlier. Sorry, go ahead, Sunna.
I was going to say you have some interesting other people coming up, like Eliza Reed,
for book club, yes. And then we have Philip Ruffton, who's a translator. Who remember we met him last time, and he's going to be back on. And he's award-winning translator. He's American that's lived in Iceland for over 20 years now. Yeah, we actually went to his house last year too. Sunna, Doug, and I. That's what some Icelanders are so friendly. You say, "Hey, I'm coming back." Oh, well, come to our house, have coffee. We'll have something for you. So, and then let's see, who else do we have? I think. Oh, well, Bill Valgardson will be in next week. So we get some great people to come and talk.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's always great. And I think actually the thing for me just being quite busy is sometimes not being able to make some of these. And it's like, oh man, hopefully they come back again. But yeah, it's really, I think, great. All the people that get connected with this. And I learned so much.
Yeah. And I'd like to compliment you guys because I've been listening to all the podcasts and you have some great podcasts. I just listened to Susan Huff's about infant mortality. And even though I heard her tell the story in Iceland, I read the article, the podcast added even more, so thank you. Again, that's just great information that's there for everybody. So we're going to promote that this summer in the newsletter too. I think a lot of it is people don't understand, the older people, some of them, how to listen to a podcast. So I think I need to put those instructions in there.
Yeah. I come into that sometimes too. So it is nice to make sure everyone it's actually the easiest thing in the world, as anyone knows who's listening to this right now. And when we think about doing it, I think about at least, like, I really try to feel like, if we could have had, like, we know the oral storytelling, but also like the Icelanders who they would read to each other, in their houses. Others are doing chores and someone was reading, and I'm like, oh, that was just a podcast before, radio or speakers was invented. And isn't that amazing if they could have captured those moments, those conversations? And so, like you said, with Susan, she was with us on the trip and, told her stories on the mic to the bus. But it's important to capture those for others, but then also for us to listen back to as well. It's just, it's like it's history. It's kind of like genealogy in a different way, right? It's capturing something and saving it there for others to experience.
Definitely.
That was a good point too, though, Becky. We should, Jack, at some point make a steps 1, 2, 3 how to sign into a podcast and get that set up. But also to segue, I'm so sorry, you folks. I just had my hockey crew show up to come watch some NHL here, so I'll stay on the call. I'm just gonna drop out of the camera and the microphone. But thank you, gals, so much for the time this evening, and it was great to chat.
Great to chat with you, Owen.
Thanks, Owen.
You got to prioritize the game, that's for sure.
So I grew up in Northeast North Dakota, and we didn't have North Dakota radio or TV. Well, we didn't really have a TV until I was older, but we listened to the Winnipeg Jets and to the Canadian radio stations, and then the Canadian TV came, and that was what we had, and it was awesome, and we became big Jets fans.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of it reminds me of a different thing that's kind of related, which is I have never been more connected to Americans as a Canadian than getting involved in Iceland. And that's this kind of cross-border kind of connections that goes on. That's really, really inspiring to me. I just think it's really important. It opens up your mind. Even like Americans, Canadians, we're always, and I still agree, like we're all so similar, but there are cultural differences that are really cool when you can get into. And you throw Iceland in the mix, kind of being on that boundary physically between North America and Europe. And I love that so much. Just this way to connect different cultures together, and Iceland as that kind of meeting point. That's always like, I don't know, it just fills me with this like interest, and this kind of warm and fuzzy feeling.
Well, and when I do genealogy for people, they think that, oh, all my family lived in the USA, for example, or, oh, this other person, all my family lived in Canada. And 95% of the time, we find that it wasn't just in one place or another. For example, one side of my family, 2 people stayed in Iceland, 2 of the brothers. 3 went to Canada, 3 went to North Dakota. And so we were back and forth across the border all the time as a kid, that we didn't even think about the border back then, of course. We were just going to see our cousins, going to see our aunties and uncles. And that's really the whole mission of Icelandic Roots, is we are all Icelandic, no matter where we're living. If we're living in Japan, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, England, Canada, US, Iceland, Brazil, wherever we're living, the connection is Iceland. And that's what keeps us together and makes us stronger, is to just keep this very unique and very small heritage and culture going. And I'm so glad that Icelandic Roots is doing that with wherever people live in the world. If they have an Icelandic ancestor, then we can put them into the database and preserve them with the rest of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I've just started doing that because I knew my family came from Iceland, spent the winter in Mountain North Dakota, went up to Manitoba, but I never had really explored that till last year when I went up to Íslendingadagurinn. And now I've been doing a lot of research, and it's very interesting. It was sort of funny. I went to Iceland before I went to Canada. So I went farther back, and now I'm going, wow, look at all these connections I have in Manitoba that I didn't really know at all. And I've actually had kind of an adventure this last time. I've been looking for this grave site of my grandmother's siblings who died of diphtheria. So I finally found it this May. But then I've like, okay, there's connections with even people in Manitoba. There's people now, Saskatchewan I was reading. And now I have them in Vancouver area also. So all across the country that I'm like, oh, I have tons of Canadian cousins. And now I'm reconnecting with them, which is fun. So kind of you reach that age, you're like, oh, you have information and I have information. So we're trying to share it all. And
right.
So, and I just got a really cool book I borrowed from a man up there about the Narrows up there in Manitoba. So I'm reading it going, wow, look at all this information that I'm learning about. It was written by a man he wrote it for Logberg in 1969. It was a series, and it went from the beginning of 69 all through the year, ended in January. And in 1969, he had to be in his 70s. So this is his remembrances, and it has my great grandparents in there and things that happened to them and all. So it's really this first person account that I don't think it's published anywhere. Well, it's in Logberg, but it was put together as a book. So I was able to get a copy of it. So
Wow.
now I can read all about what, and see what my life was for my family when they
Mhm.
came over there,
Hmm.
tried to settle. So
Yeah,
thank
it's a
goodness Icelanders like to write, you know. They've
yep.
recorded the history
Mhm.
of this area.
Yeah, and
So
going, I guess, kind of well related to this, but also back to an earlier point, just how it makes you. Well, I can just use a personal story. I would say that all of this interest in Iceland and in its history has made me more interested in my family history. So I always appreciate it if I use my Avi. For an example, he turns 100 years old in June next month. June 18th is his birthday, which I never made the connection until this year thinking about it. Oh, well, that's one day after National Day in Iceland. But what's funny is when he was born in 1925, I mean, that day was always Jon Sigurdsson's birthday, but it wasn't their, national day because they were still a part of Denmark. And so that's something cool too, thinking about in one person's lifespan who's still alive today, all the changes that happen. Another cool fact on this, on Iceland and their independence from Denmark, I also recently learned, I guess you could have figured out the date on your own reading it, but this was a couple weeks after D-Day happened and the Allies invaded Normandy. So I was just imagining for someone like my Avi, was lucky to stay in Canada and farm. He was, I guess like 19 uh, at that time? Or what? Yeah, in 1944. So he stayed back farming, but I wondered what it would be like to pick up the newspaper throughout that month. All the word on what's going on in Europe, after D-Day during that month, and then maybe just this tiny little bullet point, and Iceland gains independence from Denmark. Just thinking about that history, it allows me to understand and relate to my Avi in ways that I couldn't. Maybe it's just because I was younger, but of course, you need to learn these things to really understand a person, to place them in their time. And so I will be out visiting him. He's in Saskatchewan, and he's a great storyteller still, has his faculties, his wits about him, loves to talk. So I'm going to see if he's just okay with me clipping a little mic to him. And I'll just say, just we'll talk normal, forget about the microphone. And I would love to share some of that on the podcast. It would be
That,
really important.
that would be
I
so awesome.
That would be. I don't know if you've ever heard of, National Public Radio in the US has something called StoryCorps. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No.
And they have a little recording van that I just happened to one time glimpse of it in the newspaper that it was coming to a town near me. And so I snagged the very last reservation and I was able to interview my mom
Wow.
while they recorded it.
Uh-huh.
And then it's actually somewhere in the National Archives. But for me, I'm so glad I have that now. It's so precious because I asked her about what life was like for her, what she remembers about her family and growing up. And when you have that in their own voice, it's even more powerful than written down. So
Yeah. And
you'll be so glad you did.
we don't use it enough, right? I'm talking about this. I just need to go out and do it. My mom and I, we have been doing it like just we turn on our voice recorder on our phone and just leave it off to the side. And even that alone, just like some background chatter for anyone who's listening to this, if you have older relatives, parents, grandparents, just do that. You'll be so thankful because it is important, like you say, and we all have the opportunity to with our smartphones, and we're just not doing it enough. I think we'll all regret that in the future.
Yeah, and Icelandic Roots has a way to connect all of these audios and videos, anything that you have, stories, and we have the women and children stories, but you can do anything with people living today. You can hook up these audio files or video files. I mean, how special when you go to your ancestors page and then all of a sudden you can listen to their voice. And Icelandic Roots is going to be around forever and ever, after we're gone. So we need to put our voices in there and hook up our podcast, Becky, onto onto our pages in Icelandic Roots database.
Yes. So, and I did that with my mom too on my phone. So I do have a few other snippets that, because you never know when those little things, all of a sudden they pop out with a story that you've never heard before, and it's truly valuable. So.
Well, this is maybe a really good spot to start to wrap up. I was going to ask something like, what's some new thing that you can see coming? And that, just as you laid out, Sunna, just the ability that's already there to connect audio and video, right, as well, to the database and have for people. And like you say, what a great vision that is, to just be able to go and you're finding your ancestors, your relatives, your cousins, and then there's a snippet of their voice, right? Or there's a video of them moving around and talking. Like, wow, is that ever cool?
That is very cool. So, and on my end, we're trying to develop something that can involve children for our members, because to help pass on that heritage as we get, less and less full-blooded Icelandic and stuff, but to be able to still get kids to learn a little bit about their culture, this culture that we all love, and hook them into it too. So
okay. Well, is there any other parting words you would like to say to the audience?
Just thank you so much from everybody for doing the podcast. They're so interesting and they're so varied about all kinds of topics. So we just love it, and adding all of these interesting outreach that Becky does is phenomenal. And then of course the genealogy is phenomenal too. So we just love Icelandic Roots, and we invite everybody to come and be a part of our community.
And join our fundraiser. I'm always pushing that one. So
yes, Owen and I will be setting up our team right away here.
All right.